So, a little while back, I shot some of my favorite footage that I could barely use to this day. And that's a mistake I don't want any DP making. Here's the deal. I worked on a little commercial for Russell Reserve. It's a bourbon company that's partners with Wild Turkey and maybe a few others. Of course, this is down in Kentucky where the best bourbon is made. And we went down to shoot in barrel houses, in bourbon bars around town, and of course, like their tasting room kind of thing. It was a couple days shoot, and I brought down my first AC and my gaffer from St. Louis, and we really had a good time. The biggest location for concern was the barrel houses, where we were instructed right away that we cannot use any hot lights. Nothing that can be plugged in. But luckily, we've got lights that are powered by batteries. So I was able to get around that, but I knew I didn't have the biggest budget, so I wasn't going to scatter this whole location. Also, we didn't have that big of a crew. So I had to get creative with my camera choices. Knowing they're going to be shooting in low light scenarios and needing great slow motion options, I went with the RED Gemini paired with the Type SK lenses that are Canon rangefinder lenses. Wide open, they have a soft halation that's really unique, and you stop down to Scotia and you've got yourself a nice sharp image. I've used these lenses quite a bit. They're budget friendly. They're fast, they have character, and they're easy to use. They've been rehoused, and they work great. Big fan of them. And pairing those vintage lenses with things that take years to make kind of felt like the right move. I'll let you guys decide and show you some of this footage. A challenge to my first AC, yes, for shooting wide open, but there were certain times when we were like, hey, this wide open will make more sense versus this stock down makes more sense. So having that flexibility with these type of lenses was kind of a unique thing. One of the biggest troubles with shooting bottles, whether you're at a bar top or you're just shooting them on displays, it's just the reflections. If you're a DP, you know this. One of the main things we got to do is find our reflections or lean into them. For this type of top-down setups, we definitely needed to lean into them. And there's ways to make the lighting feel sourceless, a more pleasing look, and that's with larger sources. So for us, we went with at least 8x8s, making book lights. And for the number one starting light when you're shooting a bottle, it's going to have to be the top light. But you have to keep this in mind. If you're shooting a bottle, like I said, reflections. So whatever you put that lamp, it's going to reflect. And we went with a 6-foot octadome, knowing that shape would still look good in the bottle's reflections, but also give a nice large spread. And, really, we had the space for it based on the location scout. So it was the perfect light source. And when you're shooting mixed lighting, like you're shooting slow motion shots mixed with 23:9:8 shots and you're jumping back and forth, one of my favorite little tips is to just make sure you have the exposure for whatever frame rate your highest frame rate's going to be. So for us, we might have been doing like 75 frames per second. We might have gone a little higher. I can't quite remember exactly what the Gemini has, but you want to expose for your highest frame rate. And then when you jump back to 23:9:8, throw that ND in there. See where you need to be on how many NDs to match that same FPS, that slow motion shots. That's one of the quickest ways I've found to keep a lighting setup simple versus like, let's run the light at 25%, then let's jump it up to 100% and back down to 25% and back up to 100%. For me, it was just, every time we swap frame rates, we're pulling NDs or swapping NDs. And there's definitely ways to make that more convenient. For us, we did it through the matte box, so it was physically swapping NDs. One of my favorite things about these lenses is how it kind of glows. You might see some of these shots and think, dude, what kind of filtration are you rocking? None. We're rocking it wide open. And I remember many times looking to my first AC and I'm like, dude, can you even see that? And he's like, yeah, it looks good. And sometimes we're like, let's just stop down a skosh. Just to get some more clarity. But, I did not make it easy on him. The camera was almost always moving, whether that's on a Dana dolly or handheld or low angles looking up through plexiglass as the bottles were poured into a glass cup, giving this cool, unique depth shot to just him having to pull on the most razor thin of margins. I'm very proud of his work. He's a very talented first AC. Shout out Joe Tello. Any of this crazy halation stuff, that's just coming straight from being wide open. And the look is just premium. Oh yeah, I mean, it's hard to beat. One of the things when you're shooting this shallow is, yeah, you got to trust your first AC, but also you're leaning on him a little bit to pick out where the focus should be. Sometimes he was putting his focus on, the added, olives that are going in the top of this glass, or sometimes it's more on the front of the bottle or the front of the rim of the glass. And that's just communication back and forth. More often than not, if you're moving quick, you have to make sure you have a first AC who's got good instincts, and you communicate a little bit ahead of time of what to go to. Hey, be sharp on this, be sharp on there. For me, shout out Joe, he crushed it. Even in the black of the olive, you can see where there's white bounce sources. I mean, everything reflects. So you just have to be prepared for that. One of my favorite things about the RED Gemini is its low light performance. I mean, back in the day, this was one of the best options for low light cameras. Now we have since moved on to things like the Sony FX3 or the Venice 2, or now, of course, the RED V Raptor does very well in low light scenarios. Using what we had, you had to make choices. We had windows in the barrel house that were so far away that the only option was to have them blown out just so we have enough exposure down. And then we had our gaffer put some LED lights above and have that rake through so I can get some shots on some barrel. Then we noticed some pretty unique, anywhere you walk, there's dust. So that allowed some atmosphere to be catching the sun rays coming in. And last but not least, one of my favorite things about this trip was drinking straight from the Russell Reserve's owner's personal barrel. Sure, he gives tours all the time, and they give tours from a tour barrel, and they call it his personal. He didn't pull anything over our head. This went to his private selection of stuff that he's been aging for years, and was able to give us a sneak taste on one of his favorites. So drinking straight from the source out of one of those snifter things that they pull up, they stick into the barrel, they load it up, and then, this is towards the end of the day, of course, before we wrap. Can't be drinking too much bourbon for my first ACs and everything goes a little soft. We already have soft lenses to begin with. But yeah, so trying bourbon straight from the barrel, that's one of the perks of the jobs. And especially perk of a job is on a travel shoot, it's the hang. It's hanging out with my gaffer, my first AC in a town that's new to us. It's grabbing dinners and, after set every night, and looking back on it, the gaffer and I still work together to this day, and we have great memories from this project. But here's a little pro tip for when you're shooting a project. Bring SSDs. Granted, these can be a little expensive right now, but I'm sure you've got a stock of 2 or 4 terabyte or ideally 8 terabyte SSDs that you could bring to set. Do not leave set without footage. This may be a repeatable pro tip that I've had, but I've been burned. Like I said in the beginning of this video, I mentioned that this is one of my favorite projects I've shot, but I can barely use it because every export is either in a 9x16 or 4x5 format, and majority of the shots are loaded with text on screen. And I'm not going to use shots with text on screen for my reel. I don't even have this on my website. During the time, I was being requested from other photographer or directors about, hey, do you have any bottle shots? Hey, do you have any bottle shots? Doing any sort of bottle shots is one of the easiest spec ads you can make. This was not a spec ad. And I already had some bottle shots before this, so I already won the job based on previous spec ads that I made of bottle shots. But this was now an opportunity to capture bourbon barrels, bottle pours, all this kind of stuff, but with a full crew and a full budget. Yet I didn't bring SSDs, and I didn't walk with the footage. It was a newer production company that is based in St. Louis, and I thought my partnership and connections with them would still lead to, when I get back in town, I can go get footage. It just wasn't the case. I haven't worked with that company since, and it's one of those things, like little fair warnings to people. Hey, just make sure you bring some SSDs so you can walk with this footage. Even just some of my favorite shots I would have loved to have had and been able to color myself and then add to, my reel. Fair warning, don't be like me. Bring some SSDs. So if you ever see a Russell's Reserve bottle out there on your next little shopping trip to a liquor store, know that your buddy Stephen Greathouse shot some of that. But if you want to see more of my work, you can check out steven2greathouse.com. Thanks for watching. Peace.
Money. Boom. Yeah. Money. 1 out of 10. All right. Thanks.